I'm Caroline Hyde from London in for Emily Chang. This is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, a change of ownership in the cards for Britain's largest payment processor. We'll analyse US rival Vantiv's $10 billion deal to buy Worldpay. Plus, Alibaba enters the ring as the fight to dominate the smart speaker market intensifies. How the Chinese titan's Genie stacks up against its rivals. And just as Tesla's Model 3 prepares to hit the road, a speed bump for the electric car giant. Why Tesla's sales shifted down a gear. But first, to our lead, a massive deal in the digital payment space. Vantiv has agreed to buy British company Worldpay for $9 billion, 9.9 in fact. This comes after JP Morgan also showed interest, but ultimately backed away from the takeover offer. Vantiv, the US credit card processor, hopes to gain greater exposure to e-commerce retailers and small businesses through the acquisition. For more reaction, we're joined by Bloomberg's editor-at-large, Corey Johnson. And with me for the hour as guest host is Martin Mignot, partner at Index Ventures. Now, among the companies in their portfolio are Facebook, Slack, Dropbox, and nearly 24 fintech firms. Now, I want to kick off with Corey first to just give us the background, really, of this deal. Bigger exposure to e-commerce, bigger exposure to SMEs. This is what Vantiv wants, but they're already kind of dabbling in e-commerce.
Yeah, so Vantiv's a fascinating company. It's based in a little suburb outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. Why Cincinnati, Ohio, for the head of global payments business? Well, what's interesting, it's a spin-off from Fifth Third Bank, which sort of tells you sort of the history of this business of payment transactions. And what's really happening here, the way this business works, is when you go into a store and you use your credit card, of course, the credit, they find out if you've got the money in your bank account, and then they come back, whether it's debit or credit, and come back and pay the merchant, approve the credit or not. But there are a number of steps that happen behind the scenes. And that business, with each of those steps, takes a different chunk. So as you get the sort of verification from the merchant, and then the movement of the money between the merchant and the bank, and then the verification at the merchant side, as you go through each of these steps, there's a little bit of money taken each part of the way, and it results in billions of dollars. But what's happened is the world's movement of commerce has gone from physical stores to online, is the payment infrastructure, and the companies servicing those businesses have changed as well. And that's why you see Vantiv making this move, because they want to take advantage of the things happening online because they've done so well already offline.
Let's talk to a man who knows about the online presence, because Index Ventures has one of the biggest fintech portfolios out there, certainly in Europe. Is it all about the graduation of payments to online, to omni-channel as well? Is this the move?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of this story. Obviously, global payment processing, as we see, is a big market, and it's still growing very fast as we move from cash to card and from offline to online. I think the Worldpay story is very much part of that move. The Worldpay is very well exposed to online. About 40% of the transaction is online. They were actually the first payment processor for an e-commerce website in the UK in 1994. So it's very much part of that DNA. And they also have a very global presence in Europe and in Asia. And I think that's part of the story that's attractive to Vantiv, which has been mostly focused on more traditional brick and mortar retailers, which have been under attack against more kind of online players. And so I think Worldpay is one way to do that. It's a trend we have seen in some of our companies. I think the main one being Adyen, which is a company based in Holland, but with a very global footprint, which is very much playing on the same strengths of a new infrastructure stack, a global footprint, and offering an omni-channel, offering POS and offline and online and mobile as well. Yeah, so that's been I think that's been very, very important to it. That we've seen that.
Corey, interesting there that, of course, this is the key move, and we're hearing of a portfolio company of Index Ventures there. What about other M&A in the sector? Because it has been hot, and interestingly, it wasn't the only suitor to begin with. JP Morgan was looking in, but perhaps backed away.
Well, let's talk about two of those. So first of all, there have been a number of acquisitions in this area over the last few years where you've seen the traditional companies that have had such a great business dealing with bricks and mortar retail wanting to have more exposure to e-commerce. So you saw Heartland Payment acquired by Global Pay. You saw First Data make a deal for Card Connect for nearly $1 billion, and of course a deal today for nearly $10 billion. And I think what's at play here too, let us not forget the very specific action that Amazon took in going after Whole Foods, if that that acquisition is to come through. Vantiv shares actually dropped on that acquisition. Whole Foods uses Vantiv to process their payments, and although they're not even mentioned in the annual report of Vantiv, you saw the shares drop about 4% on the day of the announcement of that deal, with the expectation of what if Amazon said, hey, we're going to stick with our existing payment structure, get rid of Vantiv, which Whole Foods is using, and go to use our payments processor, which is none other than JP Morgan. So the competitive space here is quite alive here, and you can see that with the M&A going on, with the old line payment processing companies trying to buy the new line companies, but also the notion that the new line e-commerce companies already are sort of kingmakers, particularly none other than Amazon.
Amazon, the kingmaker. Martin, interesting, we saw another deal in Europe, Nets, which is a Danish company, payments company, saying it was being eyed up seemingly by American VCs at the moment. But what about the Adyen's, the iZettls, the company you have in your portfolio? Is your view that M&A might be the exit route, or do you want these companies to remain standalone?
I think we'd like for these companies to fulfill their potential and be as big as they can be. And we believe Europe can create these $10 billion plus companies that can be standalone, can become public, IPO at some point, because they, some of them have a technological advantage, they have a very large footprint, and they really don't need a backer to go all the way. And that's been the pitch from Index from the get-go. That's very much what we are focusing on.
We'll see whether JP Morgan, who they eye up next, if it's not going to be Worldpay here in the UK. Brilliant reporting as ever from Bloomberg's Corey Johnson, putting it all in perspective. And Martin Mignot with Index Ventures, he's going to be sticking with me. Now, in today's revolving door, Ericsson chairman Leif Johansson agreed to step down in 2018 after 7 years in the job, completing an overhaul of top management of the embattled Swedish network company. Now, the company is in the midst of a transformation that CEO Björn Ekholm at the helm, refocusing on Ericsson's core business of selling networking equipment and pulling back in areas of former expansion, well, that haven't panned out. Now, coming up, more tech employees are speaking out against sexual harassment, how tech firms and startups are planning to combat this. And Bloomberg Technology is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out. It's at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. San Francisco, 10 p.m. right here in London. This is Bloomberg. Now, a story we're watching. Amazon will create 1,500 full-time jobs at its new Salt Lake City, Utah fulfillment center. The 855,000 square foot space will allow workers to pick, pack, and ship smaller customer items like books, electronics, and toys. This is Amazon's first facility in Utah. Now, stories of sexual harassment within the tech industry continue to come out. VC firms and tech startups throughout Silicon Valley have been rocked by numerous sexual misconduct allegations, resulting in several resignations from tech investors, with the latest one coming just this week from 500 Startups founding partner Dave McClure. Now, as the industry's move to grapple with harassment gains momentum, questions still remain on how it can actually enact true change in the male-dominated sector. Joining us now to discuss from New York is Bloomberg View columnist Joe Nocera, who wrote about this topic in his column today. Still with us is my guest host for the hour, Index Ventures partner Martin Mignot. Now, I want to start with you, Joe, because sexual harassment in Silicon Valley, we're keeping it at Silicon Valley at the moment, is pervasive and ingrained, is what you wrote in your story. And the tide is now turning, you think, as men start to lose their jobs. But just how pervasive was it, is it, and why is it tide now turning?
Well, it's so pervasive that there are studies out there that show that 60% of the women who were polled said that they had had to deal with some form of sexual harassment. So, I mean, I would say that's pretty darn pervasive. And it had gone on, it's really going on for years, because the power imbalance between a venture capitalist who has money and a female founder who desperately needs money is immense. I mean, it's as powerful as a CEO and an underling. So it's really only recently, especially after Susan Fowler wrote that incredible blog post about her year at Uber, which launched really the decline and fall of Travis Kalanick, the CEO, that women have started to come out and not talk in vague generalities, but use their names, so they're on the record, and name the people who harassed them, the men who harassed them. And there's been an explosion over the last 2 weeks in Silicon Valley over this. And jobs have been lost. And let me just say one other thing. There are going to be more explosions because women are going to keep talking about this, and more names are going to come out, and more jobs are going to be lost.
What I'm fascinated with, Martin, is whether this is something that's been talked about in Europe much. Because from my perspective, I've been in Silicon Valley for a few months, but it doesn't feel like perhaps we're going to get the explosions here that you're seeing in Silicon Valley. Am I entirely wrong?
I'm afraid you're wrong. I think the imbalance of power that Joe mentioned between the fact that there are way more men than women, especially in the VC industry, but also in the tech industry as a whole, is as true in Europe as it is in the US. And this issue of the imbalance of power I'm afraid is going to be the same here as well.
You think, therefore, is it jobs that need to be lost here in Europe and in Asia to start to see the harassment element certainly start to come away, but also the discrimination and the diversity start to even out?
Yeah, I think what's been happening in the past few weeks and past few months has been really kind of a call to arm for the industry. I think it's been obviously a lot of unacceptable behaviors and very brave behavior from these women who've kind of dare to speak up. I think it's been a really good thing, and clearly this item has moved up on top of the priority list of certainly at our firm, and I'm sure across the industry. At Index we do have 4 female investors as part of the 20 person investor team, which is not terrible, but we should do much better. And we don't have female partners, which I think it's not really a good thing. And we really need to make it as a top priority to expand the female partnership at our firm, and we're taking that really, really seriously.
Joe, I mean, your piece is fascinating. I urge our viewers to go online and read it. But it does take brave women to come out and speak against tech giants such as Uber, to take on the likes of binary 500 startups. But also, we've seen it affect other industries. And yes, maybe we start to see harassment decline. But do we see diversity pick up as well? And are we starting to see all of this coming to change in Silicon Valley?
Well, in a weird way, the harassment is the easy problem to solve because it's such an offense that, if you make the consequence, you're going to lose your job and you're going to lose your reputation. Men will stop doing it. I mean, that's what the other industries show. Gender bias, getting women on boards, getting more women founders, that is much more difficult. Although I will say, I do think one of the reasons that all this has been coming out now is because there are a lot more women founders than there were in the past. There is an increasing number of women who want to get into technology, and I think it's their frustration that is driving some of this, some of these exposés, and could lead to big change.
Fascinating from Joe. Martin, I want to ask you, because there are interesting moves going on here in Europe. We've got Albright, which is being founded as just seeking out female-founded companies and backing them and set up by females themselves. We have had Diversity VC, which is focused on shining a light on how little diversity there is in the VC community and how to improve that. What can be done? Obviously, it's being put as a #1 priority of Index Ventures. What else can be done to ensure that we get over this disgusting hurdle that is going on in the industry?
Yeah, I think it needs to start with us. I think we need to act on what we can really control, and I think for us it really means making sure we open up the pipeline and we really look at a broader range of candidates and don't only look at our personal network, which maybe because we are more male around the table, maybe more kind of male orientated as well, and that we really broaden up the scope of people who we consider as associate, principal, partners at every level of the firm. I think that's, to us, that's the critical piece, and we've been doing that for the past, from the beginning of the firm, but we've really kind of emphasized that in the past kind of 5 to 10 years, and but I think we just need to do more here. I think more systematically, one of the issues that's related to that is that if you look at computer science degree, women with computer science degree, the percentage has decreased since the 80s, and that's something that's obviously bigger than just the VC world, but something that needs to be addressed as well, well before actually people decide to start a company and to go meet with a VC, because that's an issue as well with the pipeline, very, very up the chain.
And hopefully help more entrepreneurs come through as well. Thank you very much indeed. Of course, Martin Mignot is going to be sticking with me for Index Ventures. Bloomberg View columnist Joe Nocera, who has written business columns from the New York Times and is the former editorial director of Fortune. Wonderful to have you joining us today. Thank you. Now coming up, earlier Chinese search engine Baidu held a conference focusing on its AI ambitions. So what is in the driver's seat? We'll bring that to you next. And a feature we'd like to bring to your attention, it's our interactive TV function. You can find it at TV Go on the Bloomberg. You can watch us live. If you have missed an interview, you can go back to it. You can send our producers a message, play along with the charts we bring you on air. This is for Bloomberg subscribers only, though, I'm afraid. Check it out at TV Go. This is Bloomberg. Now, 2 more airlines say they have now been exempted from the US ban on laptops in aeroplane cabins. Emirates and Turkish Airlines joined Etihad in satisfying American security concerns. In March, the US banned laptops on flights coming from 10 airports because of fears the devices could contain explosives. Now, news coming out of China. On Wednesday, search engine giant Baidu held a conference focusing on its artificial intelligence ambitions. It's a space that all tech companies are desperate to get into before it's, well, too late. Baidu is out to prove that they are a serious contender in the AI world. Joining us now on for the latest is Bloomberg Technology's Selena Wang, and still with us for the hour, guest host Martin Mignot, partner at Index Ventures. And Selena, kick it off for us, because what exactly was unveiled today? It all seemed to be about driverless cars rather than voice recognition.
Right, this was Baidu's inaugural artificial intelligence conference, and it attracted more than 4,000 people, and it was supposed to be a chance for them to show off their technology, new developments in AI, and really get the artificial intelligence community excited and ready to work with Baidu. Now, the big news from today was that they unveiled more than 50 partnerships with folks across the board for driverless cars. Now, these players included Ford, include big suppliers like Bosch, it included ride-hailing services like Grab, and Baidu basically saying, we want to be the Android of the driverless ecosystem. We want to be the open software platform and work with all of these other game-changing players to make our technology as good as possible and beat our rivals.
Martin, talk to us about the driverless car ecosystem. And is this clever, going in on a partnership strategy to try and compete with the Waymos and the Ubers?
I think they kind of have to do it in order to kind of catch up. I think they are playing catch up. I think Waymo, started way before everyone else. They've clocked way more miles than anyone else, about 3 million miles on public roads from self-driving cars, with very, very little occurrences of human drivers having to take back the wheel. Yeah. And I think Waymo is ahead in that race, and the other main tech players are playing catch up now.
Selena, where do we stand, therefore, in the race? I mean, the partnership seems to be a savvy way that Baidu is dealing with this, but we've got quite a short timeline by which time they want to get all these cars on the road, and can they achieve it?
Definitely. I think Martin made a really good point. Baidu definitely is playing catch-up here. They're behind Waymo. Experts say that the technology is a year or so behind. And I think another caveat to all these partnerships, while it is smart and it's the best way forward for them, these likely aren't exclusive partnerships. A lot of these players that were announced are also working with Alphabet's Waymo. And for these partners, it's in their best interest to be with as many different driverless car software providers as possible, just because it's still so early. We don't know exactly who's going to win. But you're right. They want to have the driverless car on the roads by 2018, mass production just a few years after that. So they need to do everything possible to get to those timelines, especially as their core business is struggling. So they have a lot to prove.
And Martin, as a VC, how are you looking at the space as to where now potentially to be looking to give funding, or are you looking now at where is a bit past it? Are these companies already larger than the ones that are really going to make an impact?
So it has been, I would say, by far the hottest area of startups and investment in the past kind of 12 to 18 months. We've seen startups coming at every little part of the slack, whether it's hardware, with LiDAR, radar, sensors around the car, software, that's kind of the Baidu announcement, or whether it's mapping, or even some battery technology. So we've really seen kind of a bit of everything. Obviously, the space is moving a lot. There are some players going for the partnership route, some other with kind of all integrated, kind of in-house development, like Waymo. So, from the index point of view, we've been focusing more on services around the car and potentially in the future around the intelligent cars, with investment like, say, Citymapper, which is developing a kind of multimodal data-focused service to help people navigate around the city, or companies like BlaBlaCar, who are helping passengers move from city to city with a ride-sharing model. So those are kind of the type of service we've been focusing on. And we'll be able at some point to leverage, we hope, the self-driving car when it gets ready and we think potentially commoditized.
Mobility first, autonomous next. Thank you very much indeed. Of course, insight from Martin Mignot from Index Ventures, and great reporting as ever throughout the AI spectrum from Bloomberg Technologies, Selena Wang. Thank you very much for joining us. Now coming up, we're sticking with AI because Alibaba is out with a new smart speaker to compete with the likes of Amazon and Google. Who else is in the race to own your home? We'll discuss next. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Elisa Parenti in Washington, and you're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's begin with a check of your first word news. President Trump discussed the dispute over Qatar in a phone call today with Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Egypt is part of the Saudi-led coalition moving to isolate their Gulf neighbor because of claims that Qatar supports terrorism. Trump told el-Sisi both sides should follow through on commitments to curb extremism. North Korea's Kim Jong-un vowed today to never put its weapons programs up for negotiation. That's after successfully testing its first intercontinental ballistic missile. The hard line suggests North Korea could conduct more tests until it perfects nuclear missiles capable of striking the United States. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas visited French President Emmanuel Macron today to discuss the latest developments in the Middle East peace process. Both are expected to discuss the next steps following the International Mid-East Peace Conference hosted in January by former President Francois Hollande. 12 people, including members of Venezuela's parliament, were injured today after scuffles inside the country's opposition-controlled National Assembly. A group of government supporters reportedly forced their way in while parliament was in session. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Elisa Parenti. This is Bloomberg. It's just after 5:30 p.m. Wednesday here in Washington. 7:30 Thursday morning now in Sydney. We are joined by Bloomberg's Paul Allen. He's got a look at the markets. Paul, good morning to you.
Good morning, Elisa. Looks like it's going to be a positive day on the local market here in Australia. Futures are already pointing up 1/3% as we wait on the trade balance for the month of May. That's expected to show an improved $1 billion surplus, up from the $500 million we had back in April. Nikkei futures are looking mixed. Futures traded out of Chicago are a little weaker. Keep an eye on Lawson shares in Japan today. The convenience store announcing a first quarter profit which narrowly missed estimates, but it maintained sales guidance. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe today also expected to announce a free trade deal with the European Union. That would cap off 4 years of negotiations, with those major sticking points over auto and dairying resolved. Earnings watch also for Yum China, just announcing in the US second quarter revenue $1.59 billion. That was a narrow miss, but same-source sales were up 3% for Yum China. I'm Paul Allen in Sydney. More from Bloomberg Technology next.
This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Caroline Hyde. Now, the competition in digital speaker assistants is getting more intense. Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba has unveiled an Amazon Echo-like device named the Tmall Genie X1. Fellow Chinese internet giant Tencent and South Korean company Samsung each prepared to develop their own AI-powered speakers, we understand. Here for more on the growing artificial intelligence landscape entering your home is Bloomberg Technology's Mark Gurman and our guest host for the hour, Martin Mignot, partner at Index Ventures. Mark, talk us through what we have on being unveiled from Alibaba. I mean, only $73, it seems, for the trial ones?
Right, and the interesting thing is only for the first, like you said, trial, 1,000 orders. I'm curious to see how high the price goes once they pass that 1,000, or even if there's going to be more than 1,000 people who are rushing to buy it. I assume there will be, given how big Alibaba's spread is across Asia. It's an interesting time for the digital speakers. I think this year, 2017, has really become the year of the digital speaker.
And everyone wants in. Samsung wants in, Tencent wants in, Baidu wants in. And how does it compare, therefore, with the landscape? Why are we seeing this drive to own the home at the moment? What do these companies want within their ecosystem?
Right. So you saw Amazon and Google jump in last year with updates to the Echo line, lots of new Alexa devices like the Tap and the Dot, Google with its home product that it launched last fall. And now the Echo Show, a new Echo with the screen, and they have the Echo Look as well, part of the same family. It's more of a, a style guide for your wardrobe. Now Apple, last month, they announced the HomePod for $350. Now you have all these players, like you said, in China, from Tencent to Alibaba, and South Korea, Samsung trying to jump in. So why do they want these? Well, let's start with Apple. The HomePod really takes advantage of Apple Music and Siri and HomeKit and Apple's home-based services and other streaming services where they're trying to make the bulk of their money in the future as hardware sales remain steady or slow down in some categories. It's important because people really want smart speakers. You see the demand for Alexa, you see the demand for Amazon and Google's home speaker products. If Apple doesn't create their own, or if these other players don't create their own, people will start buying the Amazon product, and then they might really like Alexa, and they're going to say, hey, maybe I should get some more Amazon products. Maybe I should subscribe to Amazon Prime Music and Prime Video instead of Apple Music and iTunes, and buy the Amazon Fire TV instead of an Apple TV. So we're starting to see this pace of people wanting to use those devices. And if Apple doesn't create their own, if these other players don't create their own, they risk losing other product lines to other companies.
Let's get the VC take now, because, Martin, when you see this rush for AI, I mean, you were saying how driverless cars was like the hottest investment over the last 12 months. Is AI really the hottest investment too? And is there enough talent to go around, let alone enough money?
Yeah, I think it has been a very hot area, but I think while on the driverless car, we have seen a lot of startups going after that space. On the smart speaker side, we haven't really seen anyone. Very few startups building on top of the Alexa. Even on the Alexa Skills, which is the equivalent of app on a smartphone, we haven't really seen any pitch of startup going after that. So call me a little bit of a skeptic on that kind of home, smart speaker area, where we haven't really seen the ecosystem of app developers going after them. And even as a, as a user or as a potential investor in them, I would be asking them, what is the retention? What is the engagement with those? I mean, I've had one for 6 months, and it's basically kind of, catching dust on the cupboard.
Mine's a timer, generally.
Exactly, so, and I'm a little bit of a skeptic because of that, because I think the pure voice interface is a little bit too simplistic. You don't really have a feedback of what did it understand, what task can it actually do, and that's the reason why they've been adding a screen now. But now if you got a screen and the speakers, it's just an iPad that doesn't move. So I don't really understand the positioning of those devices. I do believe voice as a complement to other things, as an interface, but as a simple voice interface device in the home, I'm a bit skeptical.
Mark, talk us, you go to the app developer conferences for the likes of Facebook, for the likes of Apple, example. How are they just not managing to entice enough developers on board? Why are we not getting the fleet of startups feeding this ecosystem that perhaps Martin would have expected?
That's a very good question, very interesting. But see, their Siri voice platform is not open to developers where, one startup can make a speaker device, put Siri on top of it, and then add their own flavor to it. That's not something that can be done right now. But Microsoft with Cortana and Amazon with Alexa have recently started offering their voice service to be used on other startups' devices. You see Harman Kardon, they're coming out with a speaker in the fall that runs Microsoft's Cortana. There's a bunch of different startups now using Alexa. It's going to take time to penetrate, but the bigger picture here, the bigger story here is the services that go with these voice-activated systems. It's what kind of music do you want to subscribe to on the Echo Show. It's what video platform are you going to subscribe to. It's about keeping players to their customers, sticking them together in those ecosystems. The last thing that Apple wants is people to use an iPhone and an Alexa speaker and a Windows PC. The last thing Amazon wants is for other people to use an Apple TV and an Alexa speaker. They want to bulk up their ecosystems and have everyone on their own platforms across their different devices, and the speaker is just one component of that.
Get addicted, that seems to be the advice. Bloomberg Technologies' Mark Gurman, thank you very much. Always great analysis from you. And guest host of the hour, Martin Mignot, raising some really valid and interesting points. You're sticking with me. Now to a story that's out of this world. After more than 2.5 years, Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic is poised to resume powered test flights. Branson plans to make the first trip into space himself by the middle of 2018. Now, Branson says after his own flight is complete, full commercial passenger operations should start by the end of that year. Branson's update is the most detailed since the October 2014 crash of Virgin Galactic's original Spaceship Two. Now coming up, analysts voice concern over demand for Tesla's high-end Model S and X cars. What does CEO Elon Musk have to show with the upcoming more affordable Model 3? We talk to the man who wrote on the book on Elon. This is Bloomberg. Now, Tesla shares tumbled over 7% on Wednesday's trading day. Analysts have growing concerns as the company reported deliveries flatlining in the second quarter. Now, Goldman Sachs and KeyBank Capital Markets issued notes saying that the demand for the company's higher-priced Model S sedan and Model X SUV may hit a plateau. Earlier today, I spoke with Bloomberg Technologies' Ashley Vance, who wrote the book on Elon Musk. I started off by asking him, well, how important the company's upcoming Model 3 will be for investors.
We can look at the S and the X sales, but the Model 3 remains this kind of make or break product for Tesla. Over the weekend, we heard from Elon that they're going to ship about 30 Model 3s this month. So the good news is that the car is arriving much earlier than Tesla products tend to arrive. It's almost on time. The bad news, of course, is that they're talking about kind of hand making 30 cars, and this is definitely not mass production like we're used to seeing from other automakers. But really, over the next year, 2 years, it's how the Model 3 sells that will that will define Tesla. And if you're an investor in the company, I mean, the only way the share price makes any sense right now is if the Model 3 does very well.
And when we're looking at the slight sell-off that we saw today in Tesla's share price, that seems to also be digesting those numbers that we got very late Monday prior to the US holiday coming from Model S, Model X sales, and they did seem to disappoint. Is there an issue that potentially there's a plateau going on here?
It looks that way a little bit. Tesla seemed to blame some of the lackluster sales on trouble getting a battery pack into production. This has been a concern, though, that's been haunting the company forever, is how many rich people are there that can buy a car that really starts at about $100,000 after you start equipping it with a few things. And you look around Silicon Valley, where I live, I've been amazed to see how many are out there. There's even more wealthy people here than I ever imagined, the same in Los Angeles. But you wonder how this plays out globally, and so now maybe Finally, that car's starting to stall a little bit, and of course that's where they make their much higher margins than they're going to make on the Model 3. So it's a problem if that stalls out.
Is the Model 3 going to eat into demand there? Do you think would people rather go for a $30,000 car but still have the Tesla finesse to it, or do you think still those who have the money would rather go for the luxury S and X?
No, I think the Model 3 is a definite problem. I mean, you can buy into the Tesla story, into Elon's story, whether you're rich or have less money, and you still get this amazing gadget. Elon's been pushing very hard for people to realize that the Model S and the Model X, these are luxury, high-end vehicles, and if that's what you're looking for, that's where you should go, because he wants those sales to keep going. But I think there's no question that these early adopters, and then just people who are into technology and want to get into Tesla, the Model 3 is going to be the obvious way to go. It's certainly, it is not just a sort of eased down version of the Model S. It is a much lower end car, but it's going to be tough to convince people of that.
And what will Elon Musk be doing to do the convincing? He's a man who takes to Twitter. We know that clearly that is his way of speaking to the masses. But how will he be trying to negotiate these, pardon the pun, bumps in the road? Will he be going out fighting? You're the man who knows him and has written on him.
Well, he is relentless about these things. I mean, part of it is just the shine. The Model X and the Model S have become a status symbol of sorts, and so that, I think, will carry on, and there will be people who just want to buy the best thing that Tesla is selling. And then, of course, Elon's going to be out there. He's going to have huge events for the Model 3. And then, we see him on Twitter all the time talking about, yes, we have this car coming, but still think about the Model S and the Model X. And Elon's relentless about this stuff. And he has this gift that the other car makers don't have, which is that his Twitter account is this immense free advertising. And it's very powerful.
Your gut, do you think they can push forward and meet these very lofty expectations that are currently being baked into the share price?
I mean, in my gut, no. Look, Tesla has struggled with manufacturing for years. If we know anything, it's that these shipment numbers almost definitely will come in under what the company is having us think about. I think with the share price, though, this can't be based on just like a 6-month thing. How many Model 3s do we ship through the end of this year? I mean, it's a 1 year, it's a 2-year story. If the company can make these cars efficiently, if he can make them at high quality, then the Tesla story gets very good. If they struggle over a long period of time, it's a huge issue, because all their competitors are coming with electric cars. Their quality is very high, and so every month that ticks by is at Tesla's disadvantage. But it's an 18-month, it's a 2-year story that we're looking at.
And Elon, of course, remains #1 shareholder in Tesla. He's got more than 20% of the company. He's clearly got skin in the game. But do the investor base, do those out there, those sitting around you in Silicon Valley, ever worry about, well, the fact that he's got so many other distractions, looking at SpaceX one day, looking at the Boring Company the next? How much do they really consider that he can continue to remain so focused?
I mean, I think people worry about this, but if we've seen anything over time, it's that the companies seem to actually be getting better at delivering on all the things that Elon promises. He seems to have much more credibility than he did, say, 8 years ago when the companies were really struggling. And so you look at this guy and you're like, there's no way he could possibly do all this stuff. And yet he actually seems to be kind of getting better at it. SpaceX has really hit its stride. And so if Tesla can get the Model 3 out, I think it buys Elon a lot of cred. And it would be a remarkable achievement.
That was Bloomberg Technology's Ashley Vance there. Now, staying with vehicles, all of Volvo's new models will have an electric motor starting in 2019. Now, the Swedish automaker will offer both hybrid vehicles and those that are fully electric. Volvo says the policy reflects the wishes of customers. Now, coming up, Amazon's proposed deal with Whole Foods could be a game changer for food delivery startups. We'll dig into what's next for the space with Deliveroo and Just Eat investor Martin Mignot from Index Ventures. This is Bloomberg. Now, a big milestone for Lyft. The ride-hailing startup has announced it's now providing over 1 million rides per day. And the company says its service, which is only available in the United States, has spread to cover nearly 80% of the US population. The announcement highlights the company's growth and momentum as it continues to battle with Uber, though it does have a way to go to catch up its main competitor, with Uber recently announcing a milestone all of its own, reaching 5 billion cumulative rides worldwide. Now, Amazon's acquisition of Whole Foods is piquing interest in food tech. The CEO of Ocado, that's a UK-based online grocer, said it's now holding talks with the US grocers about licensing its technology. The company's so-called smart platform encompasses everything from robots that pick groceries to software that routes delivery vans. Still with us is Martin Mignot. He's Index Ventures partner and our guest host for today's show. Index Ventures is an investor in Deliveroo. It was in Just Eat, which had exited, of course. And you were pretty prescient, I hate to say it, but going back to 2015, you wrote a piece saying the billion-dollar food delivery wars. Deliveries of groceries, recipes or prepared meals will all eat into the dominance of traditional grocery retailers. I mean, it's happening now, right in front of your eyes. And how much further has it got to go? Are we hitting saturation point now?
I think it's just the beginning, really. And I'm surprised it's taken so long for traditional retailers to really catch up. I mean, they really waited until Amazon entered, really the space to actually, start realizing that they had to do something and start, talking to people like Ocado. So I think, it's really taken a long time for some really well-capitalized and cash-rich companies to really move. But I think it's just the beginning. Food penetration in the US is close to 1 or 2%, which is a bit more closer to 5% in the UK. On average, for the rest of the retail industry, it's closer to 25%. So you see the gap is massive because food is much harder to deliver online. It is fresh, the logistics are complicated. So I think there's still a very long way to go. And I think grocery is one market, but obviously us, at Index Ventures, have been focusing more on the takeaway market, which I think is going to eat into the grocery market because people are going to cook a little bit less. I think eventually cooking may go the way of knitting. I think that's what I was writing in my article a few years back.
Even though we all love reading about food and watching it on television.
But I think it's going to be a really nice hobby for a lot of people. But I do think people see it as a core today to have every evening to cook food. It takes a lot of time that a lot of people may want to spend on something else, playing with the kids, learning new things, reading, playing games, whatever it could be. I think that's what companies like Deliveroo are doing. They're kind of outsourcing the process of cooking the food. I think that's going to take a larger and larger share of the household spend.
So how does the Whole Foods Amazon deal impact the likes of Deliveroo, which you're invested in? Because it clearly impacted Blue Apron and its price when it came for an IPO. Didn't affect, though, Delivery Hero when we came for an IPO in Germany. Do they not compete in quite the same way then?
I think they don't really today compete on the same, but I think they will over time. But I think the shift is only going to go one way. I think people will want more and more convenience, more and more of their work being done by other people, more and more specialization in a way, and more free time. And I think that's what companies like Delivery Hero, Just Eat, Deliveroo, that's why they've been performing so well. That I think people want more of that. Obviously today the price point is still a bit too high, and a big driver, especially for delivery, will be around reducing the cost of food, because that's how you really make it more mass market. So how they do it? I think the main way is going to be around owning their own infrastructure. So they are rolling out what they've called Deliveroo Editions, which is this network of, at first was kind of container kitchens, and now it's just kind of professional kitchen in normal buildings as well, where you have these kind of delivery-only restaurants, which allow restaurants to start with much lower capex than if you are kind of if you want to open a restaurant on the high street today in the UK, it's going to cost you at least £500,000 in London, and if you're a chain, closer to £1 million. The bar is really high, and obviously then you need to pay the rent, and that goes into the price of food. If you don't have those very high, entry cost and the rent, then you can start offering food for a much lower price point, and then you open up the market massively and start eating away at the grocery market.
Fascinating discussion. I wish we could go on much longer. It's been wonderful having you here, of course,
Thanks for
as well.
having me.
Martin Mignot, who's Index Ventures partner, has been my guest host for the hour. Great to have him with me. And of course, do dig into all their portfolio companies, including that one on Deliveroo. But that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. We will be back in London for Thursday's show, and we'll be joined by Frederick Court of Felix Capital for the hour. And Bloomberg Technology is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out. It's at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays at 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. San Francisco, and of course 10 p.m. right here in the City of London. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.